and gentlemen. Welcome into First Take on a Thursday. Thank you so much for being here with us. A lot to get into. Max Kellerman, Stephen A. in the house. Always makes me a happy lady. And how we feeling, gentlemen?
It's a rough day.
Yeah.
Let's get it on.
It is.
Let's get it on.
And we will get right into it. Coming up also, the Pats prepare to play the Texans tonight on Thursday Night Football, but do they have a chance if Jimmy G is unable to go? That coming up in a little bit, but we're going to start with the social injustice and violence that continues to plague our country. Athletes and coaches continue to take a stand against police shootings of African Americans. Warriors coach Steve Kerr had a strong stance, and Seahawks cornerback Richard Sherman chose to voice his concerns by declining questions from the media at a news conference, instead making a statement in the wake of more police shootings this week. Take a listen.
People are still missing the point. You know, the reason these guys are kneeling, the reason we're locking arms is to bring people together, to make people aware that this is not right. You know, it's not right for people to get killed in the street. We need black fathers to be in the community, to stay there for your kids, but they're getting killed in the street for nothing, for putting their hands on their cars. And I think that's the unfortunate part. That's the unfortunate place that we're living in, and something needs to be done. And so when a guy takes a knee, you can ignore it. You can say he's not being patriotic, he's not honoring the flag. I'm doing none of those things. I'm saying it straight up. This is wrong, and we need to do something.
No matter what side of the spectrum you're on, I would hope that every American is disgusted, with what is going on around the country. With what just happened in Tulsa 2 days ago with Terrence Crutcher. I mean, it's. Doesn't matter what side you're on the Kaepernick stuff. You better be disgusted about the things that are happening.
Before their game last night, the WNBA's Indiana Fever knelt and locked arms during the national anthem in their own form of protest. Stephen A., are these protests a new reality?
I believe it is. More importantly, it's gotten to the point where I believe it should be. Obviously, when Colin Kaepernick first took his stance by not standing for the national anthem, although most of us religiously supported his right to do it because he's an American citizen and he has that right, most of us also said it's not something specifically that we would have elected to do, Max. At this point, it doesn't even matter. When you see the kind of things that have been transpiring, and the fact that it appears that there are some people, a few people in our law enforcement community that are not getting the message. It has riled up the black community, obviously to tremendous proportions. I mean, you watched the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina last night, and I've got friends and loved ones down in that area, and I'm here to tell you, they're talking about how it's absolute chaos. And you see the things that are transpiring. I mean, it looked like the 60s out there. Now, I was born in 1967, so please don't quote me, don't hold me to that in terms of trying to be an expert, because I wasn't born until 1967. And in your case, it was after 1970. And I'm not going to get started with you. It's probably younger than that, much younger than that. Much younger than that, yes, it's a compliment. The point that I'm trying to make is that in the end, what it comes down to is that this is not going anywhere. I applaud what Steve Kerr said. Steve Kerr's a good man. He's not just a damn good coach. He's a good man. And he's very conscientious, and he loves players, and he loves the NBA, and he loves a lot of people, period, because he's just a good person. And I think it was important to hear somebody like him say something the way that he did. Richard Sherman, can't say enough about how proud I am of him for stepping up and just saying these things are wrong. Something has to be done about it. Isaiah Washington, former actor on Grey's Anatomy, came out with a post basically asking us all to entertain what if, African Americans throughout the United States of America didn't show up to work for one day or didn't spend any money for one particular day, what kind of impact that would have. I would add to that, just like white folks supported black folks during the civil rights movement and helped propel that to elevated levels, the white community can join in that cause as well if they so chose, if something like that were to happen. I found myself a little bit gung-ho about that initially. And then I got back to the hotel last night, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from the television set to see what was transpiring. This has elevated to significant proportions, and something has to be done about it, and not enough of us have pointed to the leagues itself. And I'm not talking about the NBA, the NFL, or Major League Baseball. I'm talking about the owners who own teams in those leagues. Remember when there was an ABA-NBA merger? Remember when the USFL wasn't able to necessarily take off and be real legitimate competition to the National Football League? You know, antitrust legislation that ultimately prohibits the Major League Baseball from having competition. Why? Because you have owners with deep pockets who can speak because of their clout and their cachet. And as a result, it forced politicians and our political infrastructure to pay attention to what they desired, what they wanted, what they felt was best, and ultimately it provoked action. That's where we are right now. The players can only do but so much. The professional athletes can only do but so much. But these billionaire owners, like the Jerry Jones of the world, whose franchise is worth $4.2 billion, maybe, just maybe, it would be incredibly helpful that instead of talking about how much you abhor or disagree with the position of a Colin Kaepernick, you'd look at the bigger picture about how these African-American athletes, who you have no problem exploiting, okay, and using to your advantage so you can gain notoriety, popularity, and ultimately money. Maybe, just maybe, if you heightened your level of sensitivity when it came to the plight that exists within their respective communities, and you used your considerable muscle to talk to people and to strive to make a difference, I promise you, whereas Capitol Hill and others with the power to make change would just give professional athletes lip service, they wouldn't be able to do that with the likes of a Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys, even a Daniel Snyder of the Washington Redskins, the Mark Cubans of the world of the Dallas Mavericks, who's a brilliant man, and others. People with money, with power, with cachet can make a difference. And I think that's what we're seeing this go in that direction. And quite frankly, we need it to.
A lot you just said there. We're going to talk about Cam Newton in a little while. I'm going to table that for a second. I said early on in the process when Cap took the knee and people were talking about it that I believed more players would take a knee and this would become a problem for those in professional sports who didn't like it. The question is this the new reality? The answer is that, yes, this is the new reality because what's being protested is an old reality. In fact, the reality of law enforcement attitudes and behavior toward people of color, if anything, and the lot in life in American life, in that respect, people of color, has likely improved over the years. Think about that for a second. The difference now is cameras and phones. Social media means that awareness has been heightened. Yeah. So if you are horrified because you are now seeing this stuff and you weren't aware of it before, think about what that means if, in fact, this has gotten better over the years. It used to be worse. So this is an old reality, and people are fed up. Now, why is this coming to the fore to the extent that it is in terms of protest? Is it just about technological advances, cameras and phones, and social media? No, it's not just about that. It's also, by the way, to the credit in this respect of the NFL, for example. These are college-educated people, for the most part. You know, the players that you see on the field are college-educated. Why are we hearing about it now? Black men are in higher profile positions, like, for example, the quarterback position, which at one point in time was, you know, ask Warren Moon about this. If you were black, they would try to make you play another position, even if you had great success at quarterback. Now you have a league with far more African-American quarterbacks, and they are college-educated, and they are outraged at what has happened and what they have seen and experienced, and in Kaepernick's case, been made increasingly aware of as an adult. And they're using their positions to try to affect change. Now, Jackie Robinson wasn't in a position to protest. You know, he broke the color barrier in baseball, but Muhammad Ali was. There were black players in the past in the NFL, in the last several decades, who were not in the same position to protest as Kaepernick is, as Cam Newton could be, or he's in that position. Certainly how he chooses to use his position is up to him. But that's why I think we're seeing this new reality. It's an old reality. It's easier to disseminate the message with social media and phones and cameras, technology. And you have people from groups who have been who have been oppressed by the reality, now in positions where they can do something about it. I think that's what we're seeing. So new reality, yes. And here's the other thing. For those who would say that's a bad new reality, I just want to enjoy sports. I get that. I really do. I sympathize with that position because sports are a great distraction. And oftentimes you want to escape the world and we get on our timelines, what is this, news now? Like, you know, CNN is, I want this to be, I want to watch sports. And I get that because sometimes I feel the same way. I just want to get away from it all.
So do I.
However, I don't see another way to, I mean, I'm sure others have, and others do have different points of view. From my point of view, I find it very difficult to say that someone in Kaepernick's position or a position like that who takes a courageous stand and tries to heighten awareness of important social issues and pressing social issues, I can't criticize. Well, I'm happy that they're doing it. I think they deserve praise.
Let me tell you why this is not going anywhere. America didn't realize what it was asking for. Here you are, you're the United States of America. We've got sports, and you want these athletes to play, go out there and perform to the best of their ability. But as the numbers proliferated, as million-dollar contracts and tape delay and second fiddle sports to Major League Baseball ultimately ended up usurping baseball in terms of popularity, generating billions upon billions of dollars, becoming mega businesses, conglomerates, corporations, etc. They asked the professional athlete to be more than just an athlete. You asked them to be a role model. You asked them to be someone that helped you parent your kid. You asked them to be somebody that helped you uplift communities. You asked the professional athletes. You basically compelled them to be more than just play games and go home. So as a result, since you've asked them to be so conscientious about so many other things, okay, mind you, these are professional athletes that come from impoverished and disenfranchised backgrounds where there's liquor stores on every corner, weed spots everywhere, strip clubs and all of this other stuff. You're putting this stuff in their face, all right, which is temptation, which is bad stuff, which is not something that can ultimately propel them to new heights. But then you're asking them to go out there and be role models and be individuals who uplift communities. And you're asking them to do these things when they're a very young age and they haven't even matured to certain levels. So once you did that and forced them to become conscientious, now they're saying you're not going to be the only one that defines what we should get conscientious about. This is what we're conscientious about. And now it's one thing to go to the protest, but don't expect it to stop because, my goodness, when we talk about these owners, again, I'm getting back to them. Because if you're an owner, it's an uncomfortable silence that's existing right now. What about when those same players that's talking to the community, that's talking to political, politicians or what have you, what about when they turn around and they start looking at the owners who employ them and they say, excuse me, you have this cachet to generate business for yourself in a multitude of areas. Jerry Jones is the owner for the Dallas Cowboys, okay? But that billion-dollar playpen that he built, what just happened there? I believe it was a fight with Canelo Alvarez. So you, in other words, you're able to do business.
Oh, he's been disappointed by the anthem protests, according to him.
I know that, but I'm saying you're generating different businesses outside of football because of who you are and what football has enabled you to capture. Well, what happens when the players start looking at a guy like Jerry Jones? And I'm not trying to pour it on him because I'm not getting on him. I'm just talking about an owner.
Example of an owner.
I'm getting on him. I'm saying he's saying he's disappointed by the protest.
What about when players look at you and say, well, what are you going to do? Why can't you do something? What about when these players do that to these owners? Because eventually they're going to do it.
Incidentally, to bring it back to the beginning of this, which was the anthem protest, it's interesting how the NFL he encourages players to stand but doesn't mandate it. The NBA does mandate it. Right. And I believe that's connected to the same reason the NBA has a dress code. Because the NBA, once upon a time, was perceived as a quote-unquote black league. And the NFL, because players in big, high-profile positions, or men in high-profile positions, were head coaches and quarterbacks, and they were white, the NFL, even though it had a large African-American population of players, was not perceived as a quote-unquote black league. And so there was a stricter enforcement of a code of conduct and dress that would suggest to middle America and to people who are uncomfortable with the idea, rather, I should say, of a black league, that, wait, no, this is non-threatening. Yep. And now it's going to be interesting to see what the NBA response is, since since dissent is not permissible in the NBA along these lines.
And as far as the question being, is this our new reality? I mean, of course it is, because the violence isn't going away. We have a news story every day where somebody's getting killed. So why would they stop?
We can't avoid it.
And we've had 20 players now who have also followed suit with Colin Kaepernick in terms of protesting since he initially did. But I want to focus on Cam Newton now. He expressed anguish over police shootings, making a rare stand on social issues during his news conference Wednesday. He addressed the shootings in Charlotte that turned to racial unrest. Here's more with Cam.
It could have happened, hell, in Atlanta. It could have happened in Los Angeles. It doesn't matter. It's embarrassing, you know, for things to just keep happening. I'm an African American. You know, I am not happy what or how, you know, the justice have been, you know, kind of dealt with over the years, you know, the state of oppression in our community. But we also, as black people, have to do right by ourselves. You know, we can't be hypocrites. My big thing is always holding people accountable. You know, no matter what the race is, no matter what the gender is, no matter what the age is, we all have to hold each other accountable. And that's where we're living in.
Stephen A., what was your reaction to Cam there, holding everybody accountable?
I was proud of him. A couple of weeks ago, I jumped all over Cam Newton when he did the interview with Trey Wingo, because my attitude was, just don't say anything, but don't sit in front of the camera acting like you're oblivious to racial oppression. Talking about 1/8 of an inch of skin is the difference between all of us, and then after that, all of us are the same. I don't want to hear that. There ain't a black person alive who wanted to hear that, because the fact of the matter is that 1/8 of an inch of skin is the excuse that oppressors have used to oppress a certain segment of our population for decades, if not centuries. Having said all of that, I thought he stepped up yesterday. I thought Cam Newton, you know, reminded us of who he is. I thought that he spoke sincerely from the heart, as opposed to somebody who was petrified of saying the wrong thing because he was scared of how it would be construed or interpreted. And that's why I was proud of him. Now, there's going to be a lot of black people that's going to get on Cam Newton, because especially during a time like this, for him to utter the words that we also got to do right by ourselves. We can't be hypocrites. And that's all they're going to hear. And they're going to be all over him. I'm going to tell those people to go to hell. I don't want to hear that. He's right. He's absolutely right. And there is a certain level of accountability that we have to accept for ourselves, because if we're not caring enough about ourselves, we can't expect anybody to care about us. Having said all of that, had he focused on it and glossed over what's transpiring now in the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina, what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma the other day. And by the way, you remember the female cop that shot the guy in Tulsa? She's on paid administrative leave, okay? And you heard a guy from the helicopter yelling that that guy looks like a mean character, or he looks like a threat. Come to find out, at least this is what they're saying. I don't know if it's factually incorrect, but what they're saying is the guy that was in the helicopter saying that that guy in Tulsa looked threatening from the helicopter, mind you, 1,000 feet up in the air. Apparently that was the cop's husband. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they were saying. I was getting calls. I got numerous calls on my radio show yesterday with people saying that, but I don't know. My only point is saying what I'm saying about Cam is this. At the end of the day, there's two sides to this, and both sides are absolutely right. Absolutely. As African Americans, we got to make sure we care about one another, watch over one another, and not kill one another. You know, black on black crime, yes, there's white on white crime, there's Latino on Latino crime. As Dr. Michael Eric Dyson said, it's neighbors killing neighbors. It's not black on black, white, Latino, Latino. It's neighbors killing neighbors. But I play a numbers game, Max. I'm thinking about 66% of the population being white, 17% of the Latino population existing in America. That doesn't even include the 11+ million illegal immigrants, if you want to, or 20 million, depending on who you listen to, and they're 27% of the voting bloc, or the 13% of the African American community. The numbers are low for us. So when we do harm to ourselves, it's devastating. Having said all of that, while I applaud Cam Newton for pointing that out, and I appreciate it and will defend his right to do it because he's absolutely right in what he's saying, I also appreciated the fact that as a star athlete in the NFL, based out of Charlotte for the Carolina Panthers, he opened his mouth and spoke up about how this is embarrassing, this is disappointing, and something needed to be said, because those words needed to come out of Cam Newton's mouth, and they did, and I'm proud of him for it.
I don't agree on your assessment of Cam Newton speaking here. I think what he did was take a specific instance, because it's now at his doorstep, it's in North Carolina that this is happening, and he made it general. This specific instance, saying wait for the facts to come out in this case, is fair, I guess. I always think it's good, and that's usually my first reaction. Let's wait till the facts come out. But he took a specific instance. He started talking about black African-American responsibility within the community and da-da-da-da-da. And that's not what this is about, which is, and Frank Luntz, the GOP image consultant, has been consulting with the Panthers, according to reports. And Cam's answer sounded to me like someone who has been coached up in terms of how to spin an image. Look, let's deal with this specific instance, which is really what Cam is being asked about. Well, this stuff keeps on going on, but hey, black people also have to take responsibility. Yeah, this specific instance, let's wait for the facts to come out. Here's the issue. In North Carolina, they just signed a law where the police do not have to release video without being compelled by the courts. Right. Now, the law is not yet in effect, but it's been signed into law, and so they're citing that already, the police are, why they're not releasing video. Let's wait till the facts come out. The problem is when the facts come out, what winds up happening? Okay, ProPublica had an analysis of FBI data, for example, between 2010 and 12. Black teens, 21 times more likely to be shot and killed by police nationally than white teens. 21 times. So what? Okay, and then what happens when they actually, when due process takes place? Philip Stinson, who's an associate professor of criminology, Bowling Green study, 13 officers have been convicted of manslaughter for on-duty killings since 2005. So the sense is that even when the facts do come out, justice is not served for black people, and that Cam is being asked about this specific instance where the claim of the victim's family is that he was holding a book, and the claim of the police is that he was holding a gun, and video exists that the police have not yet released. I think there's more to be said than this is bad and black people need to accept more responsibility.
There's a couple of things. First of all of those facts I appreciate. Obviously, they're very poignant. We know this to exist. Nobody's denying that. But let's make sure that we're fair in this regard. Number one, Cam Newton is not a statesman. Cam Newton, Cam Newton is not a historian either. Cam Newton knows what he knows. You're watching the police reports. You probably read in the local newspapers. There's one interpretation, one version coming from the family saying that he had a book. You got another interpretation from the police saying that he had a weapon.
And there's video.
Hold on.
Won't release.
I understand that. The police officer who shot him was black. The police chief was black. So now we get into a bigger issue here. And if we're talking about just the specter, the possibility of this individual having a weapon, now we get into a bigger issue because, see, one of the things that need to be mentioned, and this is very, very important, I know we got to move on, but it's important that I say this because it's incredibly critical. Max is coming from a perspective of right and wrong. I am not disputing anything that you're saying. I'm 1,000% with you, and I agree with what you're saying. My point as a black man is I want you to live. So now, in other words, what I'm saying to you, if you did have a gun, if the police interpretation is right, I want people to hear that because I want black individuals to know, don't get out your car with a gun. I want them to know, roll down those damn windows. I want them to know, put both hands on the steering wheel. Don't get me wrong, because Richard Sherman is right when he sits up there and says, how am I supposed to go and lecture and be a conduit for change, influencing young minds and kids and telling them if you obey the law, you'll have nothing to worry about, when we've got guys obeying the law. And there is something to worry about. I totally get that. My point to you is those are the incidences where we've got to bring that up. But there are other instances where if you indeed are provoking the police, you don't need to do that. You have to understand that to some degree, if they're law enforcement officials, they do have the power, and you have to address it accordingly. Because if you don't, you're going to get yourself killed. So Max Kellerman and everybody that thinks like him is absolutely right. You have no dissenting voice here. I'm saying to you, we're thinking about the facts in terms of what's right and wrong. I'm thinking about surviving another day so you can convey and display those facts and live to fight another day as opposed to taking yourself out. That's what I'm thinking about.
I totally appreciate that point. What I'm saying about Cam is we've now reversed positions where originally I said, look, Cam's not a statesman. Cam is, entitled to say, look, I feel generally this way. And you felt otherwise, like he sounded like he was worried about his brand. You now feel that he's saying something. I now feel that he's being brand conscious. I just want to say that I think the reason the problem is going on, and I would have liked to hear him address it a little more specifically along these lines, there's a big difference between a gun and a book. The police have video they're refusing to release. And I think the reason this is really going on is that based on the statistics and our history, even if the video was released and turns out it was a book and not a gun, justice is unlikely to be served. That's what's happening in the streets of North Carolina right now.
Yeah.
And one more stat I want to leave people with. This was as of yesterday. So Washington Post has been tracking police shootings. 698 people have been shot in 2016. Now, 173 of them are African American, but as you alluded to earlier, only 12% of the population is African American, 6% men. So those numbers are astounding when you're looking at those proportions. Exactly. We will leave it there. Bill Belichick and the Patriots are keeping it close to the vest. Shocking as to who will start at quarterback when Brock Osweiler and the Texans come to town tonight. Jimmy Garoppolo or the rookie Jacoby Brissett? It's a game time decision, folks. Houston is favored by 1, and their head coach Bill O'Brien, he's very familiar with Belichick, being his former OC and assistant. Max, let's start with you. What chance do you give the Pats tonight with uncertainty at quarterback and potentially with Gronk?
Texans are going to win this game.
Oh.
Texans are going to win this game. And the Patriots are so ridiculously great because of Bill Belichick and the whole organization that comes as a shock. Like, think about this. Against what other team who's missing their Hall of Fame quarterback, their excellent young backup, their likely Gronk, best offensive player who's not the quarterback, Dion Lewis, who's their third down back. They're missing all this, and still people are like, whoa, look at this.
That's a good point.
The Texans, who are 2-0, who have a quarterback who so far is earning his contract, which surprises me to tell you the truth. Although, given the way Fuller has played, opposite DeAndre Hopkins, who's an elite receiver, they have real targets. Lamar Jackson on the brain. Yep. Lamar Miller running the ball now. But I think more than anything, this is going to be a coming out party for Jadeveon Clowney. Clowney, when he has been on the field, has become an underrated player. Not like he doesn't sack the quarterback a whole lot, and that's what people are expecting. Although he hadn't always been lining up on the blind side of the quarterback either, but he's been good against the run. He's just been an overall good defensive player. And now, I know they move Watt all over the line. They do a lot of things with that line. But now he ain't playing linebacker. He's not on the left side. You see him more on the right side, coming in from the blind side. I expect some sacks, too, especially the way J.J. Watt's been playing. You don't want to go in his direction. I think there's going to be a coming-out party for Jadeveon Clowney, Stephen A., and I think the Texans win this game. And if Gronk doesn't play, if he's in fact out, I think they easily cover the spread.
I got the Patriots winning tonight. I think the Patriots going to find a way. I think Jacoby Brissett is going to start. By the way, I'm rooting for him to start. Do y'all know that he would be the first African-American to start at quarterback in Patriots history, and the only other team in NFL history that has not had a black quarterback are the New York Giants? Did y'all know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, well, we learn something new every day. Here's the deal. I'm rooting for him. I want him to do well. I believe he will. I just believe in Bill Belichick. I believe particularly when he's going up against coaches he's familiar with.
Yes.
His protégés per se. I like Bill O'Brien. I'm a fan of his. I think he's a damn good coach. And I'm a fan of Rick Smith, the general manager, as well. Jadeveon Clowney, I'm not sold on yet. I'm not saying the brother can play. I just need to see more, whether or not he's dependable, whether or not he's reliable. I don't know if this is a coming-out party. Houston's the number 3 ranked defense. They're number 3 against the pass. I assume they can get at the quarterback, because anytime you got a J.J. Watt in the lineup, you're going to have an opportunity to get to the quarterback. But I just see the New Englands, whether it's with Hogan, whether it's with Bennett, obviously Edelman or whomever, I just think they find ways to get it done. And LeGarrette Blount has been running the ball effectively as well. Houston ranks 12th against the run. Not great, but not, not poor. I just look at New England. I see them getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands. I don't see Houston's pass rush being that formidable for New England in this game, because I think that Belichick is going to have this kid getting rid of the ball quicker. I think New England's defense will find a way to make plays, because I'm not sure about how ready Brock Osweiler is yet. And whether if you key in on DeAndre Hopkins and force Brock Osweiler to go elsewhere, I think he's going to be a bit tentative. I watched Houston last week against Kansas City. Surprised me a little bit, but what I saw was Bill O'Brien getting the ball out of Brock Osweiler's hands quick as well, sort of reminiscent of what Bill Belichick does. But I don't believe anybody knows how to do Bill Belichick better than Bill Belichick. More importantly, I don't think anybody knows how to defend against Bill Belichick better than Bill Belichick.
You know what the problem is with playing the Patriots? I think, look, there's a famous saying from a book called The Sweet Science, A.J. Liebling's classic. Boxing is chess played on human bodies. And I never thought that was right, because the difference in athletic ability between two boxers can be so different that it's not even chess anymore. It's a different game. Chess, you have the same pieces, both sides. Football is much more like chess played on human bodies, and the player is the coach. The coach is the chess player. That's the grandmaster, and that's who Bill Belichick is. He's the greatest chess player with human bodies of all time.
Well,
and there
you're saying chess, but you know something? He reduces it to checkers when you go up against him, particularly if you're somebody that he has groomed. That's where I'm going with this.
My point about Belichick is when you say, oh, they're going to play the Patriots. Who are the Patriots? The Patriots change week to week based on what they need to do. They're like the T-1000 from Terminator 2. Remember, you could just like morph into anything you needed to be? That's the Patriots. Like liquid metal. They just, all this is one week it's the defense, the next week it's the offense, it's the running game, it's the passing game, they're getting after the quarterback, they're stopping the run. They do what they need to do. In this case, I think there is a tipping point of talent where the Patriots are short-handed enough that all that stuff is not going to matter, because they're also facing, I mean, it'll matter, it'll make it a closer game than it should be, but they're also facing a good coach with an improving quarterback who has weapons everywhere you look, and a defense that can get after the passer and stuff the run. And I think LeGarrette Blount, I think they're going to rely on him. When you consider what weapons they have, what options they have, if I'm the Patriots, I'm going to try to run. And that's another reason I think Clowney's going to have a big game. I just think that it's not a physically fair matchup at this point. And given the fact that the Texans can also play and can also be coached up, I like them to win and cover the spread.
And I also think you're not taking something into consideration, because obviously I disagree with you. I think you're wrong. I think that when you look at Brissett, even if it's Brissett in there as opposed to Garoppolo, think about the weapons that they have available. Edelman, Amendola, Hogan, Bennett, 5 receptions, 114 yards last week. Think about what I'm saying. Outside of Bennett, all of those names are familiar names.
No Hightower on defense, by the way.
I understand that. That's why they rank 15th overall and 28th against the pass, no question. But I think that could be a mistake, because you're 28th against the pass. We see things that we can take advantage of, vulnerability in their secondary maybe. Brock Osweiler throws more, plays right into my hands. Whereas offensively, the familiarity between the guys that are on the field with Brissett, with Belichick coaching them on a Thursday night, I'm going to roll.
How many reps has how many reps? Yeah, short week.
Short
but
week.
Listen, but I always say like Belichick with time to prepare. This is less time to prepare.
No, I'm thinking about them having less time to prepare for Belichick.
Therefore, maybe it's more about the athletes on the field. I like the Texans there, and Brissett. How many snaps has he had? How many with the first unit?
On paper, you're 100% right, but I'm with Stephen A. here. Bill Belichick on Thursday night prime time. I just can't count him out.
Yeah, Max is a professor, so whatever he's going to always go to the paperwork, and that's what you're doing. You're going to
paperwork.
Listen, if I was a betting woman, which I'm not, I wouldn't want to be picking this game. So Max going with the Texans, Stephen A. with the Pats. What do you
You're out of the eliminator pool already. What are you talking about the paperwork?
Who the hell thought the Rams were going to win?
Go on
I'm
Twitter now. We'll do eliminator picks also later. We'll share your results a little later, but we want to hear your thoughts on today's game. Tough one to pick. Coming up next, Colin Kaepernick. He's been stealing headlines early this NFL season with his national anthem protest. But how does the public feel about the 49ers quarterback? We'll tell you after the break, and you might be surprised. Colin Kaepernick sparked a sports-wide movement when he began protesting during the national anthem in the preseason. But how does the public feel about the 49ers quarterback now? Well, according to a recent poll of over 1,000 Americans, which is representative of the general population in terms of diversity, Colin Kaepernick was the most disliked player in the NFL, according to ePoll Marketing Research. So here it is in the dislike category, Cap finishing #1, followed by Jameis Winston with 22% of the vote, the Dolphins and Dominican Sue 21%, Tom Brady 13%, and Big Ben Roethlisberger at 10%. Now, I want to point out, in August 2014, the last time this poll was taken, Kaepernick was disliked a lot, but by only 6% of the population. Now it's up to 29% since the protests, etc. The coach, Herm Edwards, in the house with us to help break this down. Coach, what do you make of this?
Not surprising. I mean, if you look at history, look at Muhammad Ali, look at John Carlos, Tommy Smith. I mean, people even before that. I mean, when you do something that Colin has done, he is basically the voice of the voiceless. He's speaking for people of color. And you think about Lady Justice, she wears a blindfold, and she holds a scale that's balanced when it comes to justice. And at times, people of color feel that the scale is not balanced. And he's speaking up for all those that cannot speak, along with a lot of other athletes. And I think people get a little concerned with that if you're a sports fan. Why are they speaking? Well, that's just their occupation, the job. That's their occupation, to be an athlete. They're men first, and their husbands and their fathers and their community leaders. You know, I have 2 little girls to raise, and they're 10 and 11 now. And we have this conversation every once in a while. In school, I say, look, most kids and people in general, they want to live their life to be liked. Don't do that. You live your life to make a difference. And sometimes making a difference and standing for something that you really believe in, it's not popular. And in this case, this is not popular. This is an event that is coming across our country right now, and it's one of those events where when color gets involved in it, it's uncomfortable to talk about, to be quite honest. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about those issues because you're an athlete or you're a person that's not in that situation. It doesn't matter. We're all in that situation. We're Americans. And this is becoming a part of our country that when I look at it on TV, I get disturbed. Because here's what I see. When did in our country a person's life not matter? When did that not matter? Whether it's black on black crime, whether it's white on white crime, any crime at all. When people die and all of a sudden it doesn't matter, it's kind of like, it's okay.
Plenty of times in our country,
right?
Coach. Plenty of times.
Saying. When does that become normal for us? When it's just like, it's just normal. No, it's not normal. It should not be normal. Life is precious. Everyone's life is precious. And we got to see that. And when I watch this on television, I watch what's going on in our country, I get a little, I'm upset. I go, what is this? We're better than this. All of us are better than that. So that's what Colin is standing up for and the rest of these athletes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, man.
Life has been cheap in this country for various groups, plenty of times. To answer your rhetorical question, Native Americans in the beginning, obviously African Americans, Japanese internment camps. There have been plenty of very bad episodes in our country's history, which nevertheless is the greatest country in the world. This list, when I look at it, I see Jameis Winston, who had some problems in college, serious legal problems, but he has a big personality. He's a winning quarterback, and that goes a long way. So a lot of people like him, a lot of people don't. I wouldn't say that's polarizing exactly. Ndamukong Suh is considered a dirty player, and he's a star, so people don't like him. Tom Brady, Deflategate, and was the quarterback during Spygate, and he's a huge star, and so people, don't like him or hate on him or have reasons to. And Roethlisberger also had some serious accusations, and I think people remember that. But Kaepernick is the only one on this list who I would say is truly polarizing in the sense that, having nothing to do with his play on the field, people, as Stephen A. pointed out several weeks ago, he has forced people to choose sides. You're either with him or you're, as George W. once said, against him, right? You're for him or you're against him. And when I look at everyone else on the list, I don't really see any, although polarizing is a word we throw around a lot, I don't really see any other polarizing figures. Kaepernick heads the list because he is polarizing, because he took a stand, because he forced people to choose. And while he's enjoyed much more support, I think, than most assumed he would, there are, of course, those who don't like what he did.
This is why I like the fact. I actually am happy that Colin Kaepernick is the most hated athlete in America today, because it highlights for me where the problems are. And it highlights what he wanted highlight. If you hate Colin Kaepernick, who quietly protested, didn't prohibit anybody from playing the game, didn't prohibit anybody from coming to the game, didn't block traffic, didn't impede the fans or anything like that. He silently sat for the national anthem. When a furor was created because folks brought up our armed servicemen and women, he spoke about how he was not aiming his ire at the military, our servicemen and women, and then modified his position, his stance rather, literally, by taking a knee, but instead of just sitting down. And still, he's the most hated. Well, why? You know why? Because there are people out there who resent any African American who is in a privileged position, because their belief is you should be thankful and you should be appreciative, as opposed to respecting you for what you have earned, what you have accomplished, and the fact that you've done it in this nation under the rules established by everybody else. It's the closest, sports is the closest thing to a meritocracy that we have in this country. There is the flagrancy of the curtain and what goes on behind the scenes doesn't exist in the world of sports as it does in corporate America, which we all can attest to. And so when you take that into consideration and the fact that he is still the most hated, it tells you practically everything you need to know about where we are and how far we need to go. And my last point is this. I said this on the air yesterday, Coach, and I'll say it for you because you weren't here. And I'll say it again. Whether it's ABC News, ESPN, or both, one of my dreams, my bucket list, is for me to do what Chris Rock brought to my attention a few years ago. He said, don't come to me asking me to host some town hall meeting with a bunch of black folks. He said, we know how we feel. We know why. And we have spoken out about it for decades, if not longer. He said, you want a real town hall discussion? Let me, meaning him, and now I'm saying me, let me be, the moderator, the host, an audience filled with white folks who feel whatever they feel towards the black athlete, towards African Americans, because every white person doesn't feel that way. And I think we've evolved in a country where we can clearly see we've advanced, we've gotten a lot better, and there's a lot of God-fearing white individuals out there who don't wish harm and negativity.
Part of the multiracial coalition.
But I would love to stand before a bunch of prejudiced white folks who have the courage enough to tell us why. That is where you will get about the business of making progress, because you can't legislate people's heart.
No.
What they feel is what they feel. But when you force them to confront it, you never know what progress can be made.
But you should never tell people how they should feel either, like how you alluded to earlier in terms of saying to someone, oh, you should be happy, you have this now, you should be pleased.
That's
no,
right.
That's not your job.
Don't tell us.
Don't dictate how I should be content or what I should be content with.
That line of thinking is actually the descendant of the line of thinking where once upon a time there was a segment of the population that didn't want slaves to become literate, didn't want them to learn how to read. That line of thinking is the direct descendant of what I just mentioned.
Yes.
If you get the opportunity to do that, my friend, allow me to be your co-moderator. I would love to sit on that, because that's real talk.
Yeah.
That's how you make a
Be
difference.
must-see
right
TV
there.
and must-see change as well. Yes. Coach, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
we
you, Coach.
appreciate you. Don't miss First Take tomorrow when Olympic great Usain Bolt stops by. Max and Stephen A are going to race him. Just kidding, but that would be fantastic. We'll ask him about his incredible Olympic career and if his speed would translate to the football field. That's tomorrow right here on First Take. Speaking of speed, meanwhile, Adrian Peterson had surgery this morning to repair a torn meniscus in his right knee, and the Vikings announced the surgery was successful and there were no additional injuries noted in the knee. But a repair of this kind typically has a minimum recovery time of 3 to 4 months. Here's his head coach, Mike Zimmer, on the injury.
I think this is a pretty resilient football team. I think they're tough. I think they're determined. I think they understand that you win football games as a team. You don't win them, one guy. And we're not going to be the only team in the league to have injuries. It's just part of pro football. So we're going to keep plugging away and keep doing our very best to try to find a way to win.
AD has 7 career 1,000-yard rushing seasons. Stephen A., obviously he had the injury on the other knee. Now this one, is this the beginning of the end?
I don't believe it is. He's Adrian Peterson. He's AP. He had a lot to overcome. There's no question about that. When you think about that devastating ACL injury that he suffered a couple of years ago, coming back from that, it was miraculous. There's no way around it. You got to give respect where respect is due in that regard. I look at the Vikings' offensive line. That's obviously something that has to improve. As far as I'm concerned, he was going to age by dog years if he stayed behind that offensive line anyway, because they're struggling to block. They're the second worst offensive line in the entire football league, according to Pro Football Focus. So we got to pay attention to that and recognize the fact that Adrian Peterson, I mean, this might be a good situation for him to actually have to sit out this year and not put wear and tear on his body, because even though he turned 31, I think it was like in March or something, he turned 31 in March. Keep in mind that he missed practically a full season. 1 year he only played like 11 to 12 games, and now he's out this year 2 games into the season. It would be one thing, Max, if he went and played 13, 14 games and then got hurt. But the fact is, there's legitimately 2.5 seasons in his career where he wasn't playing due to injuries. And so now we're thinking about the workout warrior that he is, his ability to come back and to defy odds and defy Father Time to some degree. Do I think he has the capability of doing that? Obviously, I do. And I look at Minnesota. I don't expect him to be there because he's going to count about $18 million against their cap after this season. Likelihood is that they're not going to keep him, which means that, to me, he'll find someplace else to go with a stout offensive line, and he'll capitalize off of that. I do not believe this is the end for Adrian Peterson by a long shot. I believe he will be back. And when I say back, I'm not talking about back as an average player. Let me be clear. He might not be the superstar best running back in the game of football because of this injury that's got him out. But I do believe he'll be close to that. I really do.
So I'd be right about when we were talking about a couple weeks ago.
No, you thought he was finished.
And I told you you're done with one more season of looking at Adrian Peterson, then he won't be the same thing. He didn't even make it through the season.
But see, that's where you're being phony, because you said that statement, meaning Adrian Peterson doesn't get hurt. He goes through this season and just age and attrition. No, wait a minute.
I'm making that statement. I'm telling you the same thing about Tom Brady. He's going to fall off the cliff, just like Peyton Manning did, just like Derek Jeter did, just like Kobe Bryant did, and frequently based on age has to do with the way you respond to hits and how frequently you're injured and how severe the injury is.
But you have to understand where I'm coming from. Where I'm coming from is this. If you could be 20 years old and have a nasty injury.
But you're more likely to get it when you're 30 and a half.
That's not my point. My point, if you listen, is it doesn't matter to me about that. What I'm saying is, if you can get injured at the age of 21 and that can knock you out, I'm always throwing injury aside when I'm making my predictions, because injuries change everything.
You're right, but some are more or less likely to get injured. And by the way, even without the injury, Stephen A., it's not an isolated issue, just like he wasn't performing this year so far. Going back to week 13 of last season, why is that significant? He was 30 years, about 30 and a half, which is old for a running back. Once you hit 31, once you hit 32, almost no running backs are the same anymore. Only 2 have had over 1,200 yards. No one's had 1,400 yards as a 32-year-old running back. They usually hit the wall around 30, 31. At 30 and a half years old, he was 4th in the NFL in rushes, but 14th in rushing yards, and more importantly, dead last on yards per rush since week 13 of last year. So what happened to the Vikings offensive line all of a sudden? Did they morph into something new that couldn't block for him anymore? Because he was still producing at near top level.
Is that a rhetorical question?
And then all of a sudden,
is that a rhetorical question, or can I answer that? By that time, the Vikings vying for the NFC North crown, you had pretty much figured out what Teddy Bridgewater wasn't going to do to you. So as a result,
13 weeks.
Oh, no. Yeah, for some of those teams, yeah, because you're not paying attention as early on in the year as you are when it gets deep into the season.
Why is it that Matt Asiata's red zone rushing, without Adrian Peterson going back to 2014, right? Because Peterson couldn't play, scored 9 of the team's 11 red zone rushing touchdowns? 9 out of 11.
Would you like
Matt
to answer that
Asiata.
question?
That was third in
I can answer that?
Wait a minute. That was third in the NFL from week 2 to the end of the season.
I remember he was a good fantasy pickup that year.
Right. So his replacement player is actually giving you value when he's not there. And when he is there, week 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 1 and 2 of this year, he is dead last in yards per rush.
You brought up something that was very important. You brought up the last 3 weeks of the season, of the regular season. Now, obviously, that final game against Green Bay, all right, which was at Green Bay, hostile environment, Lambeau Field, going up against Aaron Rodgers and the boys. You're going to move the chains, but it's going to be a relatively low-scoring game. The Vikings ended up winning that contest 20-13. Max Kellerman, the 2 games before that you brought up about Adrian Peterson, they beat Chicago 38-17. They were walking away with it, and they beat the Giants 49-17. So what I'm trying to say to you is that it wasn't necessarily the priority.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that's not what the numbers say. The numbers say his NFL rank in terms of rushing attempts since then is 4th. That means it's a priority. 4th in the NFL. They're trying to rush the ball. They are making it a priority. His effectiveness, meaning yards per rush, was dead last.
Because when Adrian Peterson is in the lineup, you know he's likely going to get the ball.
So there's no way to disprove your hypothesis.
Nothing.
No evidence can tell you that Adrian Peterson's falling off.
Nothing. Because what I'm saying to you...
Because you have a religious devotion to this idea that he must be great, but he's getting older.
No, he's getting older. He's hurt now. Obviously, coming back from that, I believe in him, but I don't know, because obviously an injury of this magnitude at this particular age, it could end up being detrimental. My predictions on Adrian Peterson, Tom Brady, people like that are predicated on if they're healthy, who you're seeing now, it will take an injury to knock them off their pedestal, because based on their ability, I don't expect a drastic dissipation.
I'm giving you evidence that, in fact, they were using him a lot toward the end of the year. His effectiveness went down. It went down at the age that you would predict it would go down. The same thing happened to every running back who ever lived. Only Walter Payton and John Riggins, and Riggins was a very different kind of back, but Walter was a fullback playing running back. But only Walter Payton, really, of elite running backs. Had even 1,200 yards at the age of 32, which is the time it would take basically Peterson to be 32 when he comes back. But Peterson will be the first guy to do it. This is what I'm saying. If he remains an effective back, it'll be the way Larry Fitzgerald has remained effective. He had to turn into something a little different. Fitzgerald's still an excellent wideout, but he's not what he once was.
But that's like
he's
Jordan.
a slot guy.
But that's like Jordan or Kobe or somebody turned into different, because they became primarily jump shooters.
No, but Jordan remained the best player in the game.
Wait a minute. But what I'm saying is they became primarily jump shooters. When Jordan was averaging 20 for the Washington Wizards,
no, that's not it.
But what I'm saying is he still averaged 20.
But he wasn't any good, Stephen A.
No, excuse me. It wasn't that. No, last year he wasn't. But the point is, prior to that, Jordan was more than serviceable. He had a J. He could score on you. He could average 18 to 20
But that's not
games.
Michael Jordan anymore.
I know that. Not his standard. But what I'm saying is he modified his game. You can modify. You can modify your game, but it does help to have an offensive line. It does help to have a quarterback that can throw the ball deep.
Of course.
It has to help.
What I'm saying is this: LaDainian Tomlinson was the best running back in the game, and he hung around and he was still effective at times. But the end of LaDainian Tomlinson was toward the end with the Chargers. It wasn't really LaDainian Tomlinson after that. The Adrian Peterson, can he still be effective? He could play in the NFL, yes. But we're never going to see Adrian Peterson again.
In a vacuum. I don't think you take the other ancillary points into account, especially with what Adrian Peterson has to work with. Teddy Bridgewater's inability to throw the ball deep is a factor. You don't ignore that.
But Bradford can throw the ball deep, and he's not getting anything this year so far.
Adrian Peterson more so. Obviously, nobody came back better and stronger than the last ACL, is that he's going to have some trepidation mentally. He's going to be scared. Now you've had both knees done in terms of that. But as far as the age, we're seeing D'Angelo Williams right now lead the league in rushing.
Behind a great offensive line.
Well, he's 33.
Behind a great offensive line. If you put Adrian Peterson on the Steelers, yeah, he could do something. But he still wouldn't be Adrian Peterson anymore.
But how do you know if you got that offensive line? How do you know?
I'll tell you how I know. Because if he did, he would be the first to do it. And people who assume he can do it are actually, you're taking credit away from him if you're assuming he's going to do it.
If there's anything, well, you don't know that either, Molly.
Yeah, that's what I'm
We don't know that. We don't know if Adrian Peterson's going to play scared, A, because he's AP, all right? And number two, behind the offensive line, you don't know what he's going to be able to do. And there's always a first in everything.
Yes, there is always a first. But the odds are against it.
But who denied that the odds are against him?
So you're saying he's going to be the million-to-1 guy? guy. Okay.
Well, it may not be 1,000,000 to 1. I'm saying to you, every now and then there is someone who comes along and defies the odds. So what am I saying?
Sets the
I'm saying
trend.
I look at Adrian Peterson as that rare commodity who could defy the odds.
And I will
like
say
Brady.
this. I'll say this
That's what I'm
about
saying.
the Brady and the Adrian Peterson thing. There are reasons to believe if anyone's going to do it, it could be them. Brady takes care of himself. Bill Belichick will figure it out, etc. Adrian Peterson came back from an ACL unlike anything you've ever seen. He's next to superhuman. But if you look at Adrian Peterson's numbers and isolate his performance right at the age where you expect to fall off, boom, you see the fall off. And now he's hurt.
Okay.
We will leave it there.
No, we disagree.
It was
But
good.
I'm happy
It was
you
good.
disagree with
It was a good debate, though. Speaking of injuries, Jimmy G's availability in question for tonight's game against the Texans. The Pats may lean on rookie quarterback Jacoby Brissett, but can they win without Jimmy G calling the shots? Mark Schlereth weighs in when we come back.
I don't know this Max coming. I don't know you right now.
I get it. He's famous. Literally. What have you done with Stephen A. Smith?
Your boys can't come over your house.
I'd like to lick the tears off their faces
Oh,
like Scott
gosh.
Hennerman.
Damn.
People blowing me up on Twitter.
It's the truth. Period.
Me.
And last point is this.
That's a blunt.
Stay off the weed.
There's the snap, Garoppolo. Here comes pressure from the end. Over the middle, toss, touchdown, Amendola. 10-yard touchdown pass, the third in the first half, coming for Jimmy Garoppolo. Rolling to his right against pressure from Alonso, completes it to Mitchell, the rookie.
And Jimmy Garoppolo is hurt. His right shoulder is bothering him. He's bending over. He's now down on one knee. If the trainers come out, he's going to have to come out of the game for a play. And so now the rookie quarterback, Jacoby Brissett from North Carolina State, is going to have to come in the game here.
Week 3 kicks off tonight. Yes, sir. It's the Texans and the Patriots in Foxborough, but it remains to be seen who will start at quarterback for New England. Jimmy G listed as doubtful, and if he doesn't play, the rookie Jacoby Brissett will get his first start. Mark Schlereth, our friend in the house. How are we doing?
What's up?
Good, man. How you guys doing?
I'm good.
We're
It was good when you're here.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, great. I appreciate that.
We need you to break this down for us,
All right.
for these concerned Patriots fans out there. If it's Jacoby at the helm, can the Patriots still win?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? I mean, here's the thing about the New England Patriots. First and foremost, there's two types of teams in the NFL, and Max and I were talking about this in the break. There's the team that basically says, this is who we are, this is what we do, we're going to go out there and try to cram it down your throat. And then there's the New England Patriots. They are like, what do you do poorly, and we're going to attack that. What do you do well? We'll stay away from that. And essentially, we're going to change from week to week who we are and what we do. And you go back to that game last week where Jimmy Garoppolo was just cutting them up. The play design was incredible. The ball was out of the quarterback's hands. There were times where it was 1.8 seconds gone. Now, just for you, like if you and I are going against each other in a one-on-one pass rush, for you to beat me clean, I'm playing guard, you're playing defense. For you to beat me clean without me touching you, takes about 1.7 seconds to get the quarterback.
You do everything right and you blow it as an offensive lineman, and they do everything right.
I whiff, and it's going to still take you 1.7 seconds to get the quarterback. So the ball is out in 1.08, 1.21, 1.36. I mean, it was like you're watching, you're going, this is incredible. And so they'll give him a plan to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And, you know, this is an incredibly tough matchup. Now, the Texans are really good. Defensively, they're outstanding. They still have some issues on the offensive side of the ball. They're still turning the ball over. But I don't put anything past Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots.
I don't put it past them
good.
either, but do you think they're actually going to win?
No. I think the Houston Texans are going to win. I think this defense is outstanding. They lead the league in sacks. They've got a bunch of different guys. Finally, they put Jadeveon Clowney at defensive end and start messing with trying to make him something that he's not.
Yeah, Mark,
so they've done a good job
Max
with
brought it
that.
up earlier.
Yeah, so they've done a good job with that. J.J. Watt still coming off that back injury. Isn't what he's been in the past, but is getting better. You saw him make plays last week. I still think the Houston Texans defensively are outstanding. I think they win this game simply mostly because of the third-string quarterback that's going to play tonight. But still, I would not. I'll sit and watch this game tonight, and I won't be shocked at all if the New England Patriots win it.
I'm rolling with the Patriots. I'm rolling with the Patriots because I think a couple of things. Number one, even though Jacoby Brissett is a rookie, even though he's inexperienced, he's surrounded by experience. Bennett may be new, but Edelman is not new. Amendola is not new. Hogan is not new. LeGarrette Blount is not new. That offensive line, even though it's not elite, it's not bad. I think about New England, and I also think about Bill Belichick and coaching against Bill O'Brien. And proteges don't necessarily have success against Bill Belichick, if I remember correctly. I don't have their record in front of me. I didn't look that up. So if I'm wrong in any way, I apologize. But that's not my recollection, what happened to him when he goes up against a Romeo Crennel or anybody else. I don't look at it that way.
Mangini beat him in Cleveland.
He did. And beat him
for the most part, nobody beats Bill Belichick.
But let me get to this bigger point. Jadeveon Clowney, because Max keeps bringing that name up. Now, I'm not saying that Jadeveon Clowney can't play. I know better. I know how big time he was at South Carolina. I see a guy that takes plays off. I see a guy that's never been healthy on the NFL level. I see a guy that can be exploited. Now, Houston assisted in that in terms of how they used him. Now that they're not messing around anymore and they've got him at defensive end, maybe you can expect bigger things from him. I certainly don't anticipate that they'll attack J.J. Watt, so what you going to do? You're going to go in the other direction. You're going to attack Jadeveon Clowney. Bill Belichick is going to attack that area. Bill Belichick is who's the guy behind on the sideline that's schematically formulating things to go in that direction. I just believe that combined with how quickly Brissett is going to be asked to get rid of that football. Also, with Brock Osweiler, really, I know he's played 7 games with Denver, but I'm not sold on him yet either. I think it's something that the New England Patriots can take advantage of because they're opportunistic in their own right. And if there's a person you could be opportunistic against, it would be Osweiler.
I will say this about Jadeveon Clowney. Yeah, they're still a work in progress. They put him in a bad position. Part of being a great coach, part of coaching, in my mind, is putting guys in positions to win.
He's not a linebacker.
Right. He's just out in space. That guy was like a baby giraffe out there, right? I mean, he's just stumbling all over the place.
Right.
So all of a sudden, you put him in a position where he can have some success. And the thing about this, on this defense, he doesn't have to be the guy. He just has to be a guy.
You know what, though, Mark? To that point,
and is great.
I've been expecting him to have a big season this year. I think he's too talented. Some guys, even if it's like they don't play the game the way you want them to, if that's the knock on him, sometimes it doesn't matter. Randy Moss took plays off, but how many guys were better than Randy Moss? I mean, it's just the way it is. He's super talented, and to your point about the way they use him, what I noticed last week is every time I looked up, there was Jadeveon Clowney lining up on the right side. And I know Watt moves around, but I started seeing really more Jadeveon Clowney coming from the blind side, and he was good. Like, on every possession that I saw, he was doing something where you were like, that was good. That put pressure on the quarterback. That stopped the run. That chased down the ball carrier. Like, just from the way they're using him, it looks to me like, and you would know, the coach knows this from practice, like they're identifying him as their defensive weapon at the moment, obviously, probably, because J.J. Watt is somewhat compromised still. But that tells me a whole lot the way they're using him.
Well, the other thing is he's getting a lot of the one-on-ones. So because Jadeveon Clowney's getting one-on-ones, because you're still going, how are we going to chip on J.J. Watt? How are we going to double-team J.J. Watt? Merciless has been outstanding as well. And in nickel packages now, they're better. With Simon on one edge, they've moved J.J. Watt inside. They've even moved Jadeveon Clowney inside. So now they've got some nickel situations with Merciless on one, Simon on the other.
That's a whole lot.
They're outstanding. And you know what? It all has to tie together. So their back end has also been very good in coverage, which lends itself to you being able to get those kind of coverage sacks if you're relentless up front, and they have been that. So they're an outstanding defense. I'm with you on the offensive side, though. Brock Osweiler has turned the ball over. I think he's thrown 3 interceptions. He threw 2 last week.
Not just that, Mark. McCourty, Chung, Butler, Collins. Yeah. These people are not just experienced. They're experienced in playing with one another. Against Osweiler? I don't know.
Oh, but he's got weapons.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait. He's been pretty good so far. But it's a Thursday night. It's short preparation. And he has to go up against these dudes. I could see New England scoring at least a touchdown on defense. And that being the difference in this game?
I think the last 3 times they've played them, they've beat them double digits, and I think New England's put about 40 on them every time. So, you know,
I don't think that'll happen this time.
I don't think it's the same
I don't think so either. Completely different seasons. Thursday nights are always tough to prepare for, especially for the team that has to go on the road. That's exceptionally difficult. I'm really interested to see exactly what Brissett looks like, Jacoby Brissett looks like as the number 3 quarterback.
I also don't
Tough defense to have your first NFL start against them.
I actually don't mind the turnovers as much with Brock at this point in the season because he's got weapons on either side of the field. And when you have that, I'd like to see, especially a young quarterback, champing at the bit, willing to make mistakes, because that tells me he's trying to win. He's not afraid to lose. You got Fuller now with DeAndre Hopkins. That's a whole lot. And you got a real guy running the ball. I'd say an elite-ish back running the ball.
And one of the things they are doing, they are pushing it down the field. One of the reasons Brock left Denver, he didn't want to be in Gary Kubiak's offense. That was what he said, because you know, it's not pushing the ball down. They take their shots down the field with those 2 young receivers. And those 2 guys, that Fuller kid he's the real deal, man.
Got it.
How salty is the rest of the league going to be if they're 3-0, the Patriots, with a 3rd string?
That's another thing. We all know they're going to be like
unreal.
3-1, so they got to lose a game. This is the one they're going to lose.
We'll see. We asked you guys earlier in the show who would win. So 55% of you said that the Patriots will win and move to 3-0. We shall see.
Wow.
Mark, thanks for being with us. Always fun having you.
Well,
Coming up next.
Welcome back to First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
Oh, you know I'm hyped for this. So the last time, of course, that Odell Beckham faced Josh Norman, Beckham had 3 personal fouls and was suspended during the game. This time around, Norman will be playing with the Redskins, and our Britt McHenry said that he will shadow Beckham in the game except for those plays when Odell is in the slot. Both players speaking about the matchup yesterday.
Somewhere I saw a leak that says he's shadowing him everywhere but the slot, but it's kind of crazy because I didn't get the memo.
I expect him to play his game the way he's always played to get him in the position that he's in now. He's obviously done a good job at that.
I don't shy away from nobody. Oh, my gosh. My ego on Sunday reeks and oozes with confidence. So I don't bow down to nobody or their thoughts of me, no matter who we facing. So at the end of the day, give me your best shot, I'll take it.
It'd be the same as if I was on the other side going one-on-one with anybody else. So it is what it is at this point.
All right, Max, this one's personal for you. So Norman now is going to shadow Odell Beckham. Is this a good strategy for the Redskins after the first 2 weeks?
It's good strategy for the Giants. I mean, thank you, football gods, for the Washington franchise. This is hilarious to me. They're actually going to succumb to public pressure and take Josh Norman, a guy who is not like a great cover corner, but an excellent player, an excellent defensive player. By the way, when he says he doesn't shy away from anything, I agree with that. His competitiveness has gotten him to this point ahead of more athletic players at his position. He's totally competitive. But that's why you have a coaching staff. Like, I know you will want to cover anyone, but we think you're best used over here. And using him in that disciplined way in which they've used him so far, I think Norman's been excellent this year, as he was excellent last year. He's an excellent player. But when he tries to cover guys one-on-one, like Odell Beckham Jr., by the way, who cannot be covered one-on-one by anybody in the game currently, he got burnt. If not for 2 drop passes, and maybe credit Norman for getting in Odell's head. Maybe that's why he dropped the passes. I'm not going to take credit away. But there were 2 drop passes. Otherwise, Odell goes for like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns against the guy. He will burn Norman if they put him on him. But beyond that, it has a ripple effect because Sterling Shepard is the real deal. He's an excellent possession of slot receiver. And actually, Norman could be put to good use there. And Breeland is actually probably the better cover guy who should be better on Odell. Not to mention, you got to bracket Odell anyway. You got to send a safety to cover Odell. Now you're going to go one-on-one with Norman, who's already been burnt by Odell, and make him, who's been an excellent player, a lesser player, playing right into the Giants' hands. This is going to be fun to watch. Thank you for the Washington franchise, oh football gods. I appreciate it as a Giants fan.
I think that you're entirely too intellectual about the world of sports on far too many occasions. Obviously, that's not questioning your intelligence because obviously you have it. but you're one of those dudes where it's like everything can be analyzed and dissected. You're an analytics dude. You're the dude, you know, you're the geek with the computer from the 60s. That's who you are.
The chicken hawk from Bugs Bunny.
I mean,
Don't forget, the thing rolled out right where he thought it would.
Allow me to finish. There are going to be many occasions where you may be right over the grand scheme of things with that approach.
Right.
But there's something to be said about the eye test. There's something to be said about those other intangibles that come and assist towards one winning football games. And more importantly, establishing a culture. We're going to sit up here and let Schlereth speak in a minute because he's a guy that's a 3-time Super Bowl champion, all right? He's a guy that knows this kind of stuff. It ain't just about X's and O's. It ain't just about dissecting things schematically. It's also about a culture. I went out. If I'm Daniel Snyder, I went out if I'm Jay Gruden and Joe Barry, you know, or whomever, and I decided that this dude, who's a top 5 corner in the league, okay, who is playing for the reigning NFC champions, who's got a mouth that roars, who's got a bravado to back it up, who's known for being an irritant and what have you, ends up having a profound effect on a defense against opposing offenses, usually utilizing the zone scheme that Carolina employed. Well, the one team that was similar to doing that was the Washington Redskins, to my understanding. They go out and what do? They don't just acquire him, Mark. They pay him $75 million. They guarantee him $50 million. At some point in time, I need you to show me that you are that dude. Why? Because when I got this guy Breland and I need him to do something, and I got Kerrigan and I need him to do something, or whomever, I got a bunch of cats that I want to be Rough Riders. I need a catalyst. I need something inspirational. This team, the Washington Redskins, is ranked 29th in the league right now, if I remember. 29th. 27th in yards allowed, 20th against the pass. Evidently, what I was doing the first 2 weeks ain't working to my liking. I need to try something. What better way to do it than to bring the guy here who really made a name for himself even in that game against Odell Beckham Jr., because we know how superior of a talent Odell Beckham Jr. appeared to be, and somehow, some way, he rattled that cage. And if he can do those kind of things, and it can work effectively for us, who knows how that's going to galvanize us as a teammate so we can get the mystique and the aura that we're looking for in order to be effective. If it doesn't work, like Max swears it's not going to work, we'll be able to tell that early enough, but we got to walk into the game at least willing to try.
14-0 Giants!
As opposed to hiding, you know, a guy that we paid $50 million to.
Well, here's my thought on this. Understand what you guys have, understand what you are, and understand, more importantly, what you are not. My greatest strength in life is I understand what I'm not good at, right? You have to understand what you put your players in the position to do and what they are good at and what you can do with that. Even go back to the Patriots when they won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago with Darrelle Revis. Did Darrelle Revis lock up the number 1 guy in the offense? Usually he was on the number 2 receiver, and they doubled the number 1 receiver.
Okay.
That's how they went about that. The Washington Redskins are as dysfunctional as any organization in football. When you look at them, I mean, if you are going to change your scheme, one, there's a symbiotic relationship between coverage and between pass rush. You show me where the great pass rush, Kerrigan's a really good player. Is he an elite pass rusher?
No.
Absolutely not. He's not. And so I don't care who you are at the cornerback position, you ain't covering Odell Beckham Jr. or anybody else in this league for 4.5 seconds if you can't get to the quarterback. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't wait to get RG3 out of town, right? RG3 was just, I mean, that guy can't play a lick.
That's right.
Kirk Cousins, I mean, they were riding with Kirk Cousins, right? You like that, you know, they went all on that. Now all of a sudden, in the locker room, Kirk Cousins can't play, right? He's got to play better. I mean, this organizationally, man, I have watched them jump off sides. I've watched holding calls. I've watched missed assignments. I've watched missed blocks. I've watched sacks given up. And all of a sudden in this organization, in that locker room, it's Kirk Cousins' fault?
So in other words, you agree with me?
Yes, right.
Yes, I agree with I agree that they are as dysfunctional as possible.
Oh, nobody denied that. Nobody denied that. I didn't say they weren't dysfunctional. You never heard me say that.
Should Josh Norman shadow Odell Beckham on Sunday?
I would say that's not our defense, and that's not going to be what's going to get us. What should happen is you should find a way to double team Odell Beckham Jr. as much as possible.
But wait a minute, couple of things. No one said that they weren't going to do that. What they said was this one dude would be one of them. That's number one. They never said, oh, he's got him and that's it.
No, he said Max was right.
No. I'm getting to that point. My point is they never said that Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't going to be doubled. They just said that Josh Norman is going to be wherever he goes. Number two, and more importantly, what I'm saying to you is this. I granted, because you pointed out Jay Gruden. I believe I've called out Jay Gruden on a couple of occasions already.
Yes.
I think I've done that.
Yeah.
Joe Barry, the defensive coordinator, I think so. Daniel Snyder, I don't have to. You've done plenty of that. We all understand that, how dysfunctional they can be. My point is, we already know what doesn't work. Who can tell me what does work for the Redskins? Even when they won 9 games last year, every game was against a team sub 500. They didn't have one victory all of last year against a winning team. I'm simply pointing out, schematically and what have you, if you have this dude who is Josh Norman, okay, you could sit up there and put him on the number 2 and double your number 1, or you could have him as one of those guys. Either way you slice it, I'm talking culture just like you're talking culture, just in a different way.
Stephen A. Sterling Shepard had over 100 yards and was actually the primary receiving target. You also need to worry about him.
You got Breland for him. You got Breland
Bill
for him.
Belichick, you're saying this is the hallmark of a dysfunctional organization. You paid him the money. It's like a politician who lets the political arm of his election campaign affect the policy decisions he makes because they made certain promises. You're letting the GM.
That happens all the time, by the way.
And it's always bad when it does.
Not always, but go ahead.
And you're letting the GM who made business decisions influence the coach and how he uses the pieces. Does Bill Belichick do that? We talked about the genius of Belichick. No, Belichick looks at the pieces he has and says, how can I deploy these best to win?
But I feel like with this team, what you alluded to earlier, there's either a team that here's what I do and I stick with it regardless of the opponent, and then there's the other team that, when you said there's 2 teams in the league that exploits weaknesses, and right now I'm not sure who the Redskins
And Mark,
are.
I was told by Hall of Famers.
I don't know who the Redskins are either. So
I was told by Hall of Famers, you answer the call. You sit up there, and when you're in an elite corner, you ask for that assignment. I was told that.
Okay,
Am I wrong?
which is fine, but I'll flip the script on you. Then you know what? Then when we're talking about Josh Norman and not covering the number 1 receiver, how come those number 1 receivers aren't going, hey man, I only want to line up at the Z in a right formation only against Josh Norman because I want their best. Right? I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Is any of those receivers? No. Antonio Brown's moving around. He's in the slot. He's over here. He's at the X.
Who's a better strictly cover corner, Breland or Norman?
Well,
see, it's a question though, at least, right?
Yeah. Breland has struggled so far this season to some degree, so I would probably say Norman. But again,
remains to be seen.
Right. Exactly.
We got to leave it there.
We'll see.
All right.
Mark, thank you so much for being with us.
My
the
pleasure,
Giants
guys.
are favored at home.
Watching First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
Coverage of the World Cup of Hockey continues today. First at 3 on ESPN, Finland taking on Russia. Then at 8 on ESPN2, USA takes on the Czech Republic. Friday, we've got 2 postseason impact games on tap for you. First at 2 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, the Cardinals face the Cubs. Then in our 7 o'clock game on ESPN2, it's the Yanks taking on the Blue Jays. The Patriots and Texans, meanwhile, match up tonight in a battle of unbeaten teams. The Broncos, Eagles, Giants, Ravens, Steelers, and Vikings are all also off to 2-0 starts. Who is the best 2-0 team, Max?
This is pretty obvious. The Patriots. And I say that because there's some predictive value here. And we're not just saying at this moment. Obviously, I took them to lose to Houston, to the Texans at home. But you guys took them to beat the Texans, a 2-0 team.
Yep. We'll talk tomorrow.
And they're playing their 3rd-string quarterback. They probably don't have Gronk, who is in the argument for greatest tight end who ever lived. They don't have their 3rd down back. I mean, this team, the Patriots have gone on the road to beat Arizona, who's still considered by some a top 5 team, without Brady, without Gronk, without their tackles at the time, without Deion Lewis. you want to make an argument against the Patriots, you can argue the Broncos. But that's about it. The Patriots are the best 2-0 team, Stephen A.
Very compelling argument. But wrong as usual. I'm rolling with the Steelers. Matter of fact, you know what? I'm getting to that point, man, where, you know, I'm going to wait a few weeks, but I'm about ready to think about, you know, because of the Steelers secondary. Well, I am thinking Super Bowl, but it's because of that damn Steelers secondary. I'm still suspect on them. They're ranked 31st, okay? But they're number 2 in rushing, and they're the number 8 defense overall, so I'm good with it. But their offense, we haven't even hit our stride yet. You're talking about, Marcus Wheaton is not there yet, Ladarius Green is not there yet, Le'Veon Bell is not there yet, and you're lucky that Martavis Bryant couldn't stay off the weed, because if I had him, it wouldn't even be anything to discuss. You talk about a dude that would be sitting up here gloating every week, just sitting there with just arrogance, oozing all over me, like, please, mere bag of shells, we got this. It would have been me if Martavis Bryant was available. That did not happen.
But he's not going to be available,
But
correct?
he's not going to be available.
Okay, just check.
So again, I'm a bit shaky on it, just a touch. But I am growing with my momentum. I think right now, the fact that the Steelers beat the Cincinnati Bengals without those weapons last week says something to me. It touches me in the right way. And I got to tell you, with Wheaton coming back, and Ladarius Green eventually coming back, and Le'Veon Bell only having one more game to miss before he gets back, and thank God, because D'Angelo Williams has been just, loaded with a workload. I'm just saying, I'm looking at the Steelers right now. Got some speed, got some youth in their secondary. Still need to improve, but nevertheless moving in the right direction. I'm flowing with the Steelers right now, man. I'm flowing with the Steelers right now. Big Ben, Antonio Brown. And by the way, they beat Cincinnati last week. Antonio Brown only had 2 receptions. Only 2 receptions. And they still beat Cincinnati. These are the kind of things I'm paying attention to.
If you were drafting a team to beat another team, your first pick might be Tom Brady. Your next pick might be Gronk. On the defensive end, like, you could do a lot worse than Hightower. They haven't had any of those guys, and they're 2-0 with a win over. And that doesn't even take into account their latest cheating scheme. Who knows what it is, but I'll bet you they're working on it right now.
It may be so, and maybe so, and maybe it might work. But if there's somebody that can knock them off the trails, I think that Mike Tomlin and the crew could do it. With Big Ben, Hall of Famer, with Antonio Brown, balling, with
how much better can Le'Veon Bell play than what D'Angelo Williams doing right now?
If you are the Steelers or any team like the Steelers, here's how you neutralize the New England Patriots. Offensively, you keep them off the field. You move the chains. And D'Angelo Williams and Le'Veon Bell, if nothing else, could do that. I'm rolling with the Steelers right now, man.
Stephen A., you're good at most things, but making picks not one of your strengths.
Excuse me.
I don't
want to hear that from you.
It's been only 2 weeks.
Please.
Please, I picked
Seattle,
the Broncos and I picked the Cavs
It's a crime for me to
they lost to the Rams twice last year.
Focus. It's only been 2 weeks. Stephen A. has to say goodbye to the first take.
And I don't care. I didn't want the workload anyway.
How do you feel?
I didn't want the workload anyway. I didn't want the workload anyway.
Now I know you're lying. You're the hardest working man in the business. Now I know you're lying.
I didn't want the workload. I didn't need more added to my workload. It was for me because you cheat, and I gotta work around your cheating.
You eat work for lunch. Now I know you're lying.
I gotta work around y'all cheating. Y'all are both cheaters, man. Y'all both cheaters. Yeah, I'm telling you.
Please. So he chose Seattle as the lock of the week, and the Seahawks lose to the Rams in Los Angeles, thus eliminating Stephen A.
One of y'all are gonna lose this week. One of y'all gonna lose this week.
So it's down to us too, Max Kellerman.
Yep.
You advanced with Carolina winning week 2. Excuse me, I did. And then we cannot pick the Seahawks and Panthers after we've already both chosen them. So here is my lock. I am going with the Packers. They're going to redeem themselves at home against Detroit. And I will remain standing at the end of this.
Well, you may. I don't know. We'll see. I know I'll remain standing.
Over the Eagles?
That's right. The Eagles.
So risky.
The Eagles are mirage. Yes, they've been playing much better defense. I think Carson Wentz is the real deal. He's still a rookie. The Steelers' defense is much improved, and there's no way the Eagles are going to stop that Steelers' offense. Steelers are going to beat them on the road.
All right, we'll leave it there. Do you want to say anything? You want to go
I'm good.
back and yell?
Listen, I'm more than happy to lean on y'all and y'all expertise. I don't need more work added to my schedule. I'm good. Okay. I'm good. And you know what? I deserve to be out of it. Listen, I deserve to be out of this. I deserve to be out of this because Jeff Fisher and the Rams, of all people, knocked me out of the elimination game.
He heard you.
Can you believe that? Jeff Fisher Fisher.
Yeah, you don't
Finally, he
recall that?
decides to win a game.
Karma.
Finally, he
Jay
decides to
Cutler
win a
would have
game.
knocked you out this week.
Unbelievable.
All right, after
Unbelievable.
the break, on a much more serious note, national anthem protests continue around the world of sports as social unrest continues around the country. We'll have final thoughts when First Take returns.
First Take is presented by Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here. And in part by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Don't miss tomorrow's show. Olympic great Usain Bolt will be in the house. That's going to have a lot of fun. We'll talk about his incredible Olympic career and if his speed would translate to the football field. That's tomorrow right here on First Take. Meanwhile, in the wake of the killing of 2 African-American men at the hands of police in recent days, Cam Newton, Richard Sherman, and Steve Kerr spoke out Wednesday about social injustice in America on the court. The entire Fever team kneeled and locked arms during the anthem before the team's first-round playoff game. Stephen A., where do we go from here as a country?
Well, we got to be about the business of solutions. I think the voices of the African-American community and others have been heard loud and clear. Police officers being trained, police officers, valuing black lives just as much as anybody else's life. All of that is profoundly important. At the end of the day, we've got the National Guard about to come in to Charlotte, North Carolina. Things appear as if they're going to get uglier before they get better. At some point in time, those in positions of power and influence must use their power and influence, not lean on young professional athletes to show the way they need to do so.
I will say that I think what's happening here is that leagues will be forced to separate displays of forced patriotism or read nationalism from sporting events. If the leagues are insinuating these rituals where consent is sought, hey, we hope you participate, but dissent is essentially prohibited, but you better not participate. If that's what they're doing and they've insinuated those rituals into our sporting events and sold them and marketed them to make their leagues more popular, they are now going to have to divorce those rituals from sporting events, or they will continue to hear social commentary from athletes. So I think that's where we're heading, a reduced kind of profile of the national anthem at sporting events.
Think about this, like I said last week, NFL players weren't coming out before the national anthem until around 2009. When they were paid by the Department of Defense to do so.
Yes, which was very interesting. I was not aware of that.
Paid patriotism, as Senator John McCain called it.
Scary time.
Not good enough.
All right. For Stephen A., Max Kellerman, I'm Molly Karen. We'll see you all tomorrow. Have a great night. Enjoy the game.